and they will be able to play well with others and reach across the aisle, because we do not need another Nancy Pelosi type as the speaker. We need to get legislation done, and in order to do that, we need to have a leader in the House that's not divisive.
Question 2. Can you offer guidance for Prop 22?
Prop 22. Well, there are a lot of mixed feelings on Prop 22. I did answer this question at my first town hall, and I'm going to answer it exactly the same and tell you what my personal opinion is on Prop 22. Prop 22 is something that I feel that Lyft and other app-based companies like Lyft, Uber, and Grubhub, those apps they're just looking out for themselves. What they did was they spent millions of dollars to hire lobbyists to lobby for them. Yet they're the ones that started this problem in the first place. Uber and Lyft did. And other industries are suffering. Other independent contractors are suffering. Prop 22 only covers those app-based industries. They do not cover the other independent contractors, the single mom that's at home that's a freelance writer. It doesn't cover them. And I'm going to vote no for Prop 22 because I think they should have included every independent contractor, not just a certain group of people who had the millions of dollars to flood into getting that proposition on the ballot. So until it's inclusive to those single moms who depend on that extra money by doing freelance work at home, I'm not going to support it. That's my personal opinion. Thank you.
Climate change and the environment is my top concern as a voter. What is your take investing in renewable energy and clean water, as well as putting back in place the type of environmental regulations that Trump has removed?
Well, my priority as well is the environment. I have children and grandchildren, and we need to leave them a clean earth. I don't want pollutants. I don't want harmful energy. I want renewable energy. We need to be investing in renewable energy. Not only that, but we have a humanitarian obligation to the rest of the world that we have independence from foreign energy that treats their people inhumanely, like Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia will imprison women just for driving. They will behead people for protesting and posting negative things about the government on the internet. The freedoms that we enjoy here in America, those countries do not enjoy them. And women are treated so horribly there. And one of the reasons is that a lot of countries look the other way is because they're dependent on foreign oil and foreign energy. So we absolutely need to be self-sufficient and not dependent on foreign energy. And the only way to do that is to invest in renewable energy. It can be done. Other countries do it, and we absolutely can do it. And as far as the regulations that Trump has removed, I'd have to look at them, and if I feel that it's damaging to CA26, then I would work to put some of those back into place. But I would have to look at them on a case-by-case basis. I can't just generally say it, but I promise that I will look at everything and I will come to a conclusion. I will make my own decision based on the wellness of CA26 and the rest of the country. Thank you.
I would like to know your thoughts on how our education system can be this underfunded when California taxes the most and claims it for education, a la the lottery.
Well, education, it's two parts of education. I feel that the people, the students, and the actual teachers who deserve the majority of the budget is not getting their due. I think that we are heavy on administration. We're top heavy on administration. That's where the majority of the money goes. The money should go to the students and the actual and the teachers, not to the administration. So one of the things we need to do is we need to have more involvement with parents and the PTA, and start actually looking at the budget and start cutting the budget on the administration side, and making sure, as using the power of the federal purse strings, to make sure that if you get federal education dollars, that X amount of those dollars actually goes to the students in education, into the classrooms, and not to the administration. Because what we've constantly done is given just a budget to the districts to manage, the administrators to manage, and the actual students get the smaller piece of the pie, and they take the majority of it. So we need to start regulating. I know that's a bad word, but we need to start regulating and ensuring that if you get federal school education dollars, that a certain percentage of those dollars are ensured that they will actually go to funding classrooms and not to the administration.
Conejo Valley Unified School District pulled a cruel bait and switch on high schoolers and their parents when they refused to allow them back to school until January. When CVUSD first built their uneasy cohort system, they said it was to allow an easy transition back to campus learning. Now they say it's too hard to schedule classes. Should the federal government withhold education dollars from school districts who refuse to allow all kids back to school and demand teachers follow ASAP? In addition, what is your message to those frustrated parents who are being so rudely dismissed by current Board of Education members, such as Betsy Connolly?
Well, the question was, just in case everyone didn't catch it, the question was about CVUSD saying that they were going to let kids back and then doing a switch and bait, and now kids are going to go back till January, and if I should withhold federal dollars to those school districts who do those things, and about my message to those board members such as Betsy Connolly, who wants to support this initiative. Well, first of all, I've said this several times, that if the students are going to be taught at home, in the parents' home, then some of the school budget should actually go to the parents. If parents are turning their home into a classroom, they should be compensated. And if parents have to buy laptops and iPads in order to educate their kids at home, which is required now because of the closures of the school, then I would use the federal purse strings as a member of Congress, that if you're going to get education dollars, then those education dollars, X amount of dollars needs to be allocated to each student and given to the parents, because the parents are at home teaching those kids now. And I guarantee you that if we start withholding funding and actually giving it directly to the parents, since they're teaching at home, that schools will miraculously open back up when that budget gets cut. And that's the message I have to say to Betsy Connolly, that when I go to Congress, I'm going to use the power of the federal purse strings for education dollars to make sure that each parent, that burden that's put on every single parent with a child, school-age child, to have dollars allocated to them directly outside of a stimulus package, but separate dollars. Thank you.
Ventura County Elections Office currently refuses to allow observers of signature verification personnel because they say there isn't room to accommodate observers. This is not true, as I have recently observed. Observing via Zoom just isn't effective. What can be done to ensure this most crucial part of the new mail-in vote process is observed firsthand?
Well, first of all, our founding fathers and the men and women who sacrificed their lives for this country would be appalled at the voter fraud that goes on today. And any measure to make Americans feel safe, that when their vote is cast, it's actually counted. That when their vote is cast, that they actually have a voice. And I think that being observed doesn't mean being across the room. It means actually observing someone that is counting the ballots and ensuring that that ballot is counted, not discarded. If we didn't have so much voter fraud, there weren't bags of ballots that miraculously just showed up somewhere or bags of ballots that disappeared, I wouldn't think that this would be a problem. But the integrity of our election process needs to be protected. And as an American, every single American needs to know that their vote counted and it counted properly. And there are no votes, no illegal votes that have been counted or votes that have been discarded. So I think it's absolutely appalling that this is happening. And I'm guessing it's probably going to take a lawsuit to actually change this practice across the country. Thank you.
There are so many families fleeing California for other states because of high taxes, homelessness, high crime, and terrible legislation from a dominated legislature. What is your message of hope to those Golden State residents who choose to stay and fight to right their state?
Well, I say this to you. Please don't leave. Our state is beautiful, and we need more fighters to help restore it back to the balance that it used to be. Our founding fathers were brilliant when they set up our government through the U.S. Constitution. There's a balance. And when we lose that balance, too much of one side or the other, we don't have an equal and balanced country. When one party dominates the legislation, when one party can shove any bills that they want through because there's no balance, there is no working together. It's whatever they want, whenever they want. Like the horrific bill of SB 145 in California. SB 145 changes how sex offenders have to register or don't have to register in the state of California. And currently, if there is a 10-year age gap between the sex offender and the victim, that sex offender does not have to register. That's a California law that was shoved through the legislation, even though there was a lot and fierce opposition. Parents, I'm a mom, I'm a grandmother. It's terrifying to think that my children won't be protected. But as a congresswoman, what I would do is I would make it federal. There is currently a federal statute that requires registered sex offenders to register based on their state law. Well, currently there's no enforcement for California because now they don't have to register. But I think as a legislator in Congress that I can make that a federal requirement, because those sex offenders have to cross state lines and go to other states, which makes it interstate. So when you have too much of one party or the other, and I'm not just talking about Democrats, but it happens both ways, there's no balance. We have to have collective voices. We have to have diversity of thought to be able to pass bills that is balanced for America. So I think you should stay and fight. Those who are staying and fight, we're making a difference. But if you leave California, we'll be losing your voice and your support, and we can't do it alone. We need everyone. So I implore you, please, just stay one more election cycle, and we'll see what happens. Thank you.
Do you see any problems with the mail-in voting and the vote in general?
Yes, I see a problem with the mail-in voting and the voting in general. There's too much voter fraud going on. Why is it an issue? Why would a county have an issue to purge their voter registration for people who have died, people who have left the state, people who are incapacitated? Why are we leaving those people on the voter rolls? That's just an opportunity for people to commit fraud. If you have someone that died, they're not removed. So you know what you have? You have Joe Schmo voting in their stead. That's not their vote. That's voter fraud. And there's too much of it going on across the country. I have no issue with voter ID. There are other states who successfully have voter ID, and there is no issue with it. I have a driver's license. Why not show your driver's license when you vote? Why don't you show ID? You need ID to even buy a pack of cigarettes, but you don't need an ID to vote? That is the most sacred and privileged thing as an American that you have, and our government has failed to protect it. And what happens is those small voices aren't heard. Right now in Ventura County, our African American community is 1.8%. So if there's voter fraud with 1.8%, how is our voice heard when it's being drowned out by illegal votes due to voter fraud? Those voices aren't being heard. So when they say that voter ID is racist, that's absolutely wrong. Not having voter ID is racist because the most vulnerable people's voice are not heard because they're drowned out by illegal votes who are done and cast as a result of fraud. Thank you.
What is your favorite food?
I don't know, food. My favorite food, well, I'm from Wisconsin, so I would have to say probably cheese curds. Wisconsin cheese curd. I mean, I love California, but California is not the dairy state. Wisconsin is the dairy state, so it has to be Wisconsin cheese curds. Yes.
If Joe Biden wins, do you think he will pack the Supreme Court?
If Joe Biden wins and he passes a competency test and he's actually conscious, I would say they will try to pack the Supreme Court, but any president who tries to pack the Supreme Court by expanding it is disrespecting the Constitution, disrespecting our founding fathers, and disrespecting this country. I think you are dealt the hand that you are dealt. You wait until there is an opening on the Supreme Court, and you appoint your Supreme Court justices. It's worked for over 200 years. Our system has worked. It's when legislators go in and try and meddle with our system is when we get unbalanced, like limiting the terms of the executive branch through our checks and balances off. Because now the executive branch has a term limit, but the legislators don't have a term limit. I mean, the legislators actually die in office. I mean, that's the retirement plan. The retirement plan is I'm not going to run again. The retirement plan is I died in office. And then they move on to the next generation. I think like our founding fathers did in the beginning, where they just respectfully took term limits and didn't make it a lifetime career, I feel that the legislators should do the same. So no, I don't support, and I would not support either side of the aisle of packing or expanding the Supreme Court.
Three-part question.
Who?
What is your astrological sign? What is the astrological sign of the triplets? And are there any clash of personality issues there?
Well, my sign is I'm a Capricorn. I was born December 22nd, 1972. And the triplets are Sagittarius. They were born December 21st of 2012. So they are the last day Sagittarius, and I am a first day Capricorn. They were born 45 minutes before my 40th birthday. They were my birthday present. And they're my little doomsday babies because they were born on doomsday, 12/21/12, when the Mayan calendar ends. So I call them my little doomsday babies. But there's no personality changes, clashes. They're all get along well. and they're all very much like their mother. Annabelle is mostly like me, and she can be stubborn, but she knows who's queen bee in the house, so she doesn't try it. So,
As an attorney, what do you think of Amy Coney Barrett?
As an attorney, as a woman and an attorney and a mother of 6, I am so proud of ACB. She is a beacon of hope for all women, for all little girls who are sitting at home, knowing that they can have it all. They can be a wife, they can be a mom, they can be an attorney, and they can be a Supreme Court justice. I am so proud, and I think that all of this political bickering should be put aside, and we should celebrate that we have a woman on the Supreme Court. There has only been 5 of them. And I think that I'm proud, and everyone should be proud. And shame on my opponent who comes out and talks negatively about ACB, and then in the second breath talks about empowerment of women. Well, ACB has done that. She's done that not just for American women, but she's done that for women around the world. We take advantage of the freedoms that we have here in America. When I hear my opponent talk about equal pay, equal rights, yes, that's great. We have that here in America, but other countries don't have it. They look at us as for an example, and ACB is that beacon of hope to women who are oppressed around the world. So I am proud to have ACB as our new Supreme Court Justice. And one day, I hope to join her on the bench. Thank you.
We have more questions.
I guess there's more questions that came in. I'm going to get those questions. Again, I have not seen any of these questions because this is the first time that I'm hearing these questions.
Question for you. I know you're not in office yet, but what would you be doing different now to get us a stimulus check? It seems like the current Congress is blaming the other side, but when you dig into what the holdup is, it's more money to bail out poorly ran states.
Thank you.
I'm one of many that would like some help and need it now, not next year. I work out of my house and on a budget, but it is very difficult right now. I could use a little bump to help the family and maybe even buy some fancy ice cream. Your thoughts?
Well, now that we got the glaring bald spot of my campaign manager out the way, I guess we can move on now. The light's reflecting off. But anyway, I absolutely agree with you. This political bickering about the stimulus package, and Americans are suffering. We need help now, not after they settle their political differences. And first, poorly run states, I have said this time and time again, they ran their states poorly. They were in a deficit, like California was in a deficit before COVID. Why should we give them more money to mismanage? That money should go to the people. That money should go to the businesses that are hurting, that people are losing jobs because businesses are closing. They don't understand it's a domino effect. If a business is employing 20 people and they can't keep their doors open, what do you think happens to those 20 people? They don't have a job. We need to support small businesses. We need to support companies. We need to support landlords that the governor has declared that they're not essential and they don't need their rent money to pay their mortgages. A lot of them are retired. They work, they put their little money together so that they could buy a retirement home and rent it out, and that's their passive income because they didn't have a 401k plan, a fancy retirement plan like members of Congress have. And now they don't have that money coming in. Those people are the ones that need help. And I would absolutely, when I go to Congress, this political bickering will stop. I settle differences between 3 7-year-olds every day. I think I can handle Congress. And what I would say, I've said this before, here's my challenge to Congress. Until you pass a stimulus package, don't collect your paycheck. Live like the rest of America. That's what you should do. That's my challenge. Thank you.
Hi, Rhonda. I'm concerned about what I keep hearing from local law enforcement and a large number of citizens regarding your position on BLM. Could you comment on your position on Black Lives Matter?
My position on Black Lives Matter is, yeah, we all know Black Lives Matter. Every life matters. But what I don't understand is, what is the goal of Black Lives Matter, Inc.? Let's separate the two. There is a saying of Black Lives Matter, and then there's Black Lives Matter, Inc. That's the face of it that took charge and said that they're going to claim that they represent all black people. Not true. Not representing our interests. If they were actually representing the interest of the black community, they would deal with the inner city violence where little boys and little girls are slaughtered every single day in their own beds due to inner city violence. Do those Black Lives matter? I think so. Additionally, when the president went to Kenosha to sit down with BLM, why did they refuse to sit down? We have history as an example. When the civil rights movement took place, Martin Luther King and all of the other civil rights leaders, they marched and protested in peace. They peacefully protested until they got a seat at the table. Bad things happened to them. If we remember history, there were some very horrific things that happened. One thing that happened was when the two black people dared to go swimming in a hotel pool that's whites only, and the hotel managers and the police poured acid in the pool to get them out. That was national news, and it forced LBJ to the table. But you know what? Martin Luther King went to the table. The civil rights leaders went to the table and gave our demands. And that is why we have the Civil Rights Act of 1964. So when President Trump went to Kenosha to sit down at the table, BLM had a seat at the table. Why did they sit down and make their demands to make life better for Black America? They did not, which tells me there's another agenda that they have, because they could have made a difference to millions of Black Americans in this country when they had a seat at the table, but they did not. They could help stop the inner city violence. They could help stop little girls and little boys being shot in their backyards and in their beds, which happens every single day in the inner cities. So when it comes to Black Lives Matter, I agree. Black Lives matter. Every life matters. And that's what we should be addressing. And BLM does not speak for me. Thank you.
Did you see the recent interview on Fox TV by Tucker Carlson and Bob Alinsky? If so, please comment.
I have not.
Next question. Wildfires.
Sorry, I will look it up though, and I will comment on my website. And whoever submitted that question, please email me so that I can email you your answer, or your phone number so that I can have a conversation and give you your answer. Thank you.
Wildfires are destroying lives. Insurance companies are making it difficult for people who live in infected areas to get insurance. What can be done to help minimize forest fires? Do we have an accounting on where the federal money goes? And how can we ensure that insurance companies don't make people pay astronomical fees in order to have insurance?
Well, one thing we can do to reduce the forest fires, and I've said this before, and I'm going to be consistent, is to clean the forest floors and clean out the fuel that a fire needs to burn. Fires just don't spontaneously just come from somewhere. They need fuel to keep going. And because our forests are poorly managed and they're not clean, there's plenty of fuel to just burned right through towns, cities, and homes. And in regards to the insurance companies, I think that we need to start looking at all the lobbyists and all the special interest groups who go and lobby for the insurance companies, lobby for companies like PG&E who poorly maintain their equipment and causes these fires, and they need to be held accountable. We need to stop putting the burden on the people and putting the burden and the responsibility on those who are causing these issues. And I think there should be legislation that's made that everyone should get insurance. Everyone can, if you're in a flood zone or an earthquake zone, you're eligible for insurance. I think the same thing should be with fires. I mean, this is something that happens multiple times a year, but every single year, California is burning somewhere. Forget earthquakes. We're not known for earthquakes anymore in California. Now we're known for forest fires, and this has to change. And we need more federal dollars and more federal support. However, we have a current representative now who's invisible in Washington and is not bringing that money back to this district, not bringing that money back to California. And that's exactly what I would do. I would make sure that I fight for CA 26, which includes, Ventura County and Oak Park and Thousand Oaks, Newberry Park, that was ravished by the fires, by the Wozies fires, which my own family was affected by. But we need support. I did not see our current representative bringing money back to our district for those people that were affected by the fires. But I definitely will be. I will be that squeaky wheel that makes sure that we get a piece of that federal funding pie that comes right back to our district.
10-year-old Gavin Blackwell would like to know what members of Congress do.
Well, I like this question. So this is what Congress does. Well, what Congress does now, I can tell you what Congress does now, and I can tell you what Congress is supposed to do, because Congress is doing nothing now. But what Congress is supposed to do is they are the legislative branch of the government. We have three branches of government. We have the executive branch, the legislative branch, and the judicial branch. The legislative branch passes the laws. That's Congress. Congress has two houses. We have the House of Representatives, which is what I'm running for, and then we have the Senate, which is the higher chamber. And both those collectively, the House of Representatives and Congress, the House of Representatives and the Senate make up Congress. So Congress passes the laws, that's the legislation. Then the executive branch, which the president is the head of, enforces the laws, and the judicial branch interprets the laws. So the highest court we have in the land is the Supreme Court, and the highest law we have of the land is the Constitution. So I would challenge you, and what you should do every single year is read the Constitution. And the Constitution will actually tell you how our government is supposed to work. So when you hear things on TV, you could say, that's not true, because it's the Constitution says, no, that's not how you do it. So I would tell you that the one bit of advice I can give for a 10-year-old is to always know your rights. Always know the Constitution. It's not that complicated to read. It's very short, but read it every single year and familiarize yourself with it. Because a citizen who is armed with the knowledge of their rights is a citizen who is protected. The Constitution was put in place to protect individuals from the government. That is your protection from the government. And when I'm elected and I go to Congress, I'm going to challenge you that if you think I'm doing something that's not unconstitutional, you call me and you say, hey, Rhonda, I read the Constitution. Is that really constitutional? Because you are the future, and you are the one that needs to hold all government accountable, because it's we the people, and you are part of the people. Thank you. Do we have any more questions? Do we have any questions from the audience? Yes. Come up.
What's the difference between a mandate and a law?
Okay, the question is, what's the difference between a mandate and a law? Well, you mean like a guideline in a law?
Like the mandate on wearing masks?
Well, it's really a guideline on wearing masks. The mandate is a law is enforceable. It's written, it's passed by a legislative branch, and it's enforceable by the executive branch, which would be the prosecutors. So when you read something and it says it's a guideline, it's just that, it's a recommendation. It's not enforceable under the law. You have to have a law for it to be enforceable. It goes through the procedures, like I said, about the executive branch. Well, you have your federal executive branch and your state executive branch, and your prosecutors fall under the executive branch, so they would have to prosecute to enforce the law. But if there's no law passed, they're not enforcing anything. There's nothing to enforce. So they can recommend something, but it's a recommendation. And that's what.
So is it lawful how I heard that they're fining people in LA, or can fine people in LA for not wearing a mask. Is that lawful?
Well, I don't know if they passed an ordinance in LA, because then you have local laws that are ordinances in that. So I don't know if there's a local ordinance in Los Angeles County that would require masks. Those are enforceable again under the executive branch of the city or the county. So therefore, it would be the county DA's office or the city attorney's office. If it's in the city of Los Angeles, then the city attorney would be the one that would prosecute, because that's their part of their executive branch. So it's very important. And what I recommend, and I got flack for doing it by somebody on social media, because I was in a restaurant, and they said that you can't have more than 6 people at a table. And I asked them for the ordinance that says that by the county, because they said it was a county law. And I said, well, where's the ordinance? They pointed to me, and I was like, there's nothing there. And then I find out it's their recommendations or guidelines. Well, if that's the recommendations or guidelines, then it's not a law. You could sit more people at a table. And then I asked, because I'm always thinking about other people, not just myself, but I'm thinking about, what if you're a single mom? I have 6 kids, right? What if I'm a single mom and I'm coming in there and I want to have dinner for the first time out, inside, not outside, with my 6 kids? Do we all get to sit at the same table? There's 7 of us now, right? So I think about those families with large families with more kids. Are they being discriminated against? Saying, sorry, you all can't sit together. We're gonna split your family up. Well, who sits with the small kids? And I got the question, well, the mom can sit at one table and the dad can sit at the other table. I was like, well, what if there's not a mom and a dad? What do you do with them then? These are questions that we should be asking. So if you're ever in doubt, point you to the ordinance, the law that makes it required that you do these things. Because if we're all complacent and we don't stand up for ourselves, nobody else will. So we can't just blindly follow orders. We have to say, what's the ordinance? What's the state law? What's the law? So that's what I would recommend. If you're ever in doubt, ask for them to show it to you. Okay. Anything else? Yes, sir.
So earlier, in response to another question, you talked a little bit about term limits.
Yes.
It's very obvious that the swamp creatures in Washington are not going to ever put term limits in for the Senate or the members of the House. What are your thoughts on a convention of states to accomplish that?
You mean for states to implement term limits?
No, a convention of states so the people can actually change the Constitution without.
Oh, you mean doing an amendment, not an amendment, but a proposition or a referendum to change the state constitution to implement term?
Federal, a constitution of states, to bypass the House and the Senate to amend the Constitution.
Well, we can't, constitutionally, we can't do that. It goes through, to amend the Constitution, it has to go through Congress, and then it gets ratified by 2/3 of the state.
So there's no vehicle to bypass Congress in promoting an amendment to the Constitution?
No, Congress amends the Constitution, and then the states ratify it. The states have to ratify the change. That's why it's very hard to change the Constitution.
Thank you.
But it's an interesting question that can states do it? I'd have to research that constitutionally to see if a state could put in federal term limits for their representatives. That's interesting. That might be a vehicle, but I'd have to research that one.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
In the current climate of suppression of free speech across the country, on university campuses, in the media, on social platforms, what do you see as a remedy for that? How do we fix the problem so that we can maintain our right to free speech?
Sue them. You have free speech. If they're a school that collects financial aid or gets financial aid for their students, then they can be considered a government actor and go after them for a violation of free speech.
The media, social platforms?
The media, social platforms, well, the media is very difficult because it's the First Amendment. They have a First Amendment right too. But social platform, I've said this before, I think like Facebook, all the publicly traded companies like Facebook that are social platforms, that their shareholders go after them for shareholders derivative action because they are reducing their dividends by their own political personal views. So if you limit advertising 2 weeks before the election, that's a lot of money in advertising. They're costing their shareholders money because that money goes into a pot and that goes to the shareholders. So if officers and directors are breaching their duty of loyalty, their duty of care, their fiduciary duty, then one shareholder can bring a derivative shareholders action on behalf of all shareholders for reducing and their breach of duty to their shareholders. So that's what I would do. If I was, I would organize and get together somebody that has shares of some of these social media companies and actually sue them, because we do have that power to do that. And then Congress is, starting to act now. I think they've woken the sleeping dragon, and they've bitten off more than they can chew. And I'm going to enjoy when I go to Congress actually getting in on that fight, because they need to lose their protections. Yeah. Yes, sir.
If elected President Joe Biden, do you think that he possibly will face impeachment as a result of his son's activities in 2017?
Well, I think they're impeachable offenses. Yes. Whether it happens or not, I don't know. Sometimes what's good for the goose they feel it's not good for the gander. But I feel that he should be. And there should be a full investigation. Just like they investigated Russia and they investigated Ukraine, they need to investigate Joe Biden and his self-dealings, because where does his loyalties lie? The loyalties should lie, yes. You're right, exactly. Doesn't lie with the country. It's very questionable. Obviously, access is for sale. Yes, ma'am.
So if Biden does win, then we have a Harris administration, and we have a very active extreme far left that wants to just railroad things into place. How can we stop, if he gets elected, how can we stop that from happening?
Through Congress and the Senate, and by reasoning and working together, because I don't think it's just the right side of the aisle. I think the left side of the aisle has some severe doubts about this as well. They don't want it. And that's where our checks and balances come in at, where we have the legislative branch to balance the executive branch, and that's what we're going to have to do if he's elected, to make sure that things are done. We pass laws and we're doing things, and that we check the president. There's an organization called Clawback, which is really good, and what they do is they like to claw back and give more power back to the legislative branch and take that executive power that presidents have taken. If you see, like, a lot of things are done by executive order, but that's not the way things were intended. So we want to claw back and give more power back to the legislatures, to Congress, so that we can balance that out, and that's what we're going to have to do here. We're going to have to, if Biden wins, claw that back and use the power of the legislation to call the executive branch out and say, you don't have the power to do that. That's, but I know it's quite frightening to think that we won't have a voice, because a congressional representative is your voice. By us being a republic, every person who votes, they send a representative to Congress, and that's your voice. So if Congress loses its power and loses that balance, you lost your voice. Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
Comment first.
Sure.
Some of the questions that were asked.
Yeah.
We vote you into Congress so that we can get people like you doing the right thing.
Thank you.
For the people, by the people.
Thank you.
What is your plans for economic recovery for Ventura County in light of what has happened with COVID and people losing jobs?
My plan is to actively recruit businesses to Ventura County. I'm sure I'm going to sound like a broken record, but my goal is I want to bring SpaceX to Ventura County. We have the room for it. They can expand. Yes, you can get your tour up to Vandenberg, and we're closer to Vandenberg. They want to expand. They're looking at expanding in Texas. We should be Ventura County should actively be recruiting companies here to Ventura County. Our current representative is not doing that. She's passive. She's not progressive enough to go and aggressive enough to go out and bring these businesses here to Ventura County. SpaceX would bring high-skilled, high-paying jobs right here. We could have, internship programs. We can have when our kids graduate from high school and college, we can have a partnership with SpaceX to make sure those jobs are filled by Ventura County residents. And give them incentives, and not just stop with SpaceX, but go and actively look for other companies. Ventura County has a low tax structure. Right now, SpaceX is in LA County. There's a lot of other businesses that are in LA County, and we can tell them, recruit them, come expand out here to Ventura County, where beautiful area, beautiful shores, and our tax structure is much better. So we can replace those businesses that we've lost, that have closed for because of COVID, and start expanding. Because too, if SpaceX comes out here, there's employees. Those employees, they eat, they shop, they do other things. That's boosting the economy in Ventura County. So that's my goal, is to make sure that we expand, and also opportunity zones were created. President Trump and Senator Scott created the opportunity zones. There are currently 4 opportunity zones in Ventura County. They are not being developed. Why isn't our current Congresswoman encouraging and developing those opportunity zones here in Ventura County? I'm going to actively let the citizens know in Ventura County that they're here, there's opportunity zones, you can have your own business, we can maybe bring manufacturing here, which are other jobs, but I ask you all, people who are listening on Zoom, people who are in the audience, look up opportunity zones and see the benefits that you can have right here in Ventura County. You can open up your own company. You can employ people. You have tax breaks. There's federal money available for you to do this. So I'm going to start developing those opportunity zones and building businesses here in Ventura County. Thanks. Yes, ma'am.
When we recall Gavin Newsom, what's the process of replace him? The recall would go on the ballot, or there's a special election. Depends on how it's handled. But first you need the signatures to even get the recall, and then you have to vote on whether they should be recalled or not. And then it's a process on when that recall should happen. Since we missed the 2020 ballot, it's not going to be on there, so it's either going to be a special election or on the 2022 ballot. So even if you have enough signatures, then there's still a vote just to go through with it?
Right. The recall is that you have enough signatures that want to recall them. Then you have to vote on whether everybody else wants the recall and who's going to replace him. Yeah. I think for reference, what everybody should go and look at is the Arnold Schwarzenegger election. That was a recall. That was the process. So you can look at that as an example of how the recall process works. Yeah. Okay, question.
Good evening. I'm interested in hearing if you have a plan to address the increasing homeless population in our communities. It seems as though this is out of control. I see more and more everywhere.
Yes, the homeless population is growing, and sadly, one of the reasons why it's growing is because people are just simply out of work and affected by COVID. I mean, even before COVID, we had an increase in the homeless population, but now after COVID, we have a large number of homeless people, not just people, but families, homeless families. We also have to look at the root cause of all of these issues. California is just simply unaffordable. There are a lot of families that are living in their cars, that lived in their cars and were transient prior to COVID, because California is so overregulated that there's really no affordable housing in California. We need to stop with the overregulations and the high burden on employers. I've said this before. People don't understand when businesses are overregulated and they're overtaxed. If they have 20 employees and their regulations and their taxes go up, maybe they won't be able to afford 20 employees anymore. They'll cut those 20 employees to maybe 10 employees. And maybe they'll cut the hours of those 10 employees to part-time, so they don't have to pay the high payroll tax and the high insurance and the high penalties that they have here in California. So now you have an increased people who are out of jobs. And I don't think California quite gets that, is that when you overburden businesses, you don't make more money, you cause unemployment, and therefore you contribute to the homeless crisis. Also, we have high mental illness and drug abuse. Ventura County has a mental health court, but I think the mental health court is underutilized, and people who would actually qualify for the mental health court, who should qualify for the mental health court, they don't, and they end up in the regular court system. If you're in the mental health court, you have mental issues, part of your sentencing is to get mental health help. You have a plan, and doing that, you will then therefore reduce the number of mental illness on the streets, and people would start being productive, active citizens, getting jobs and getting a place to live, and won't be homeless. So we have to stop just throwing money at
at homelessness and actually start addressing the root causes of homelessness.
Speaking of overregulation, I know that the Supreme Court's about to hear California versus Texas. I think it has to do with the mandate on medical insurance, the fee that was, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's what the California versus Texas is that they're about to hear. If they find it unlawful to fine you for not having medical insurance, could that mean that other insurances that have been, would it be unlawful also to force people to have other types of insurance? Like, it's a law to have car insurance, it's a law to have, you know, most businesses have to have work comp and this, that, the other?
I don't think so. I mean, I'd have to research legally, but legally my first thought is no, it doesn't. And trust me, as an attorney, you want people to have insurance because it costs you more money. Because if they don't have insurance, you have underinsured motorist insurance because people don't have insurance. So you have underinsured motorists and uninsured motorists, which is the same thing, but that's an add-on. So you're paying more for your insurance because other people don't have insurance. And the minimum limits here is $15,000, $30,000. So it's $15,000 per person or $30,000 per car. So if you got 5 people in your car and somebody has a minimum policy, you're only getting a maximum of $30,000. So you could break your back, break your leg, be in a severe accident. I've had one where somebody died and they got $15,000, the person having no insurance, just minimum policies. And then we have to pay for that. So if your medical care isn't paid for because the person only had $15,000 in insurance and your medical bills are $100,000, a lot of people can't afford that. They end up on Medi-Cal. Who's paying for that? We're paying for it because somebody was underinsured. And lastly, all these nice cars in California, the property damage on a minimum policy is $5,000. They hit your car, and with a minimal policy, it's $5,000. That's way too. I mean, if your car gets totaled, it's $5,000. That's what you're going. That's on a minimal policy. That's all they have to have for property damage. And if you don't have underinsured motorists or uninsured motorists or underinsured, you're just.
But didn't it cause premiums to go up when they made it the law to have it, since it forced people to buy it?
No, because if you can't afford insurance, there's programs where you can get car insurance if you can't afford insurance, but everybody should be insured. I feel that's car insurance is different than health insurance. Car insurance, you get on the road, you're driving. You should be responsible and have car insurance, because if you hit somebody, unless you show to the DMV that you are self-insured, which means you have enough money to be able to pay if there's an accident, you need insurance. And also, it's just, it ends up costing us more money, because if you have insurance, somebody else doesn't have insurance, that insurance companies, they're paying out. They're not going to keep paying out. They're going to raise premiums on everybody, because now insured people are paying for uninsured people. Right. And for cars and the same thing with work comp. So somebody legitimately gets injured I said legitimately, because I know there's a lot of fraudulent claims. Somebody legitimately gets injured on the job. Why should the rest of us pay for that injury and not that employer? There should be insurance. And now what the rate is and who's it required for, that's a different type of regulation. That needs to be balanced, because their work comp is just way ridiculous, and there's so many fraudulent claims, and these fraudulent claims will drive a business out of business. So there needs to be a balance. Not doing away with it, we just need to manage it better. Yes, sir.
As a practicing attorney, what has been your specialty?
Civil litigation and constitutional law. Is that it? One more? Okay.
What would you say to the Mexican Latinos and other international immigrants that are afraid to come out because the opposite proponents say they will be deported? And what will it take Washington, D.C. to make a difference or offer programs?
Well, you shouldn't be afraid to come out. That's a scare tactic. I would hold a free immigration clinic every Tuesday. I haven't done it this year due to COVID. But there are several ways where people can get legal status. And first of all, Congress needs to get their act together and do comprehensive immigration reform, because something has to be done. On one hand, there's one party who uses people who are here illegally, DACA kids, as weapons and a scare tactic to get them to support them. I equate it to the battered woman syndrome, where there's an abusive spouse who uses you can't afford to leave me, you have to stay with me. That's the same thing that's being used on people who are here illegally as a scare tactic. They're absolutely not going to get they're not going to get deported unless they're violent criminals. Our president has come to the table several times and said, let's negotiate a comprehensive immigration plan. But you know, the left side of the aisle likes to use it as a weapon. So I would say if you're Latino, you're here illegally, that you pick up the phone and call your Democrat representatives like Julia Brownlee and tell her to work together with the other side to put together a comprehensive immigration reform so that there is a pathway to citizenship. Because it's not true. People are not coming to bang on your door and deport you. That's not what's going on. That's just a fear tactic. And we all need to come together in Congress and figure out and work together on what to do. So that's what I would say to Latinos and other, and it's not just Latinos. Yes. I just want to say it's not just Latinos. There are people from all over the world, from Africa, from Asia, from Europe, because everybody wants to come to America to have the American dream, and that's why we're fighting so hard to keep America exactly the way it is, so that the American dream still exists for everyone. Thank you. That's it. Well, that was our last question. I want to thank everyone for attending here in person. Those of you who are attending on Zoom, thank you for tuning in. I hope I answered all of your questions. If you have any questions that you didn't get to answer, you want to ask me, feel free to get in touch with me via email through the campaign. You can call our campaign office. You can send a text to our campaign number. Contact us on social media. I'm here. I'm always available. And when I'm elected, I will hold regular town hall meetings once a week to give my district an update of what's going on in Washington and to discuss your issues or concerns that you have so I can take them back to Washington with me. We're going to have one more town hall meeting prior to the election on November 2nd. I encourage you all to send in your questions, to come in person if you so choose, practicing social distancing and wearing a mask if you so choose. But I'm here. And I just want to say again that I did not review these questions prior to. This is a true town hall meeting. And I want you, please call your current representative and ask her why she's not here, why she only chose to do one debate with no rebuttals. I don't know why she's scared of rebuttals, but no rebuttals. A lot of people ask me, I wish you could have rebutted this or said that, and I said, well, those were the terms of the debate. Julia Brownlee did not want rebuttals in our debate. So I decided to have these town halls, and I'm here answering these hard questions. Who knows where your congresswoman currently is today? She could be in Santa Monica or she could be in DC, who knows? But I want to say that I'm here and I will be here when elected. Thank you. Have a good night. God bless you and God bless America.